I think you practiced that enough. We saw you doing it before I was even close.
We watched you all the way down the hall.
I'm like, wait a minute, that's fake clapping if I ever saw it.
You don't. So things seem to be going pretty good.
Things aren't too shabby.
Yeah.
Thanks for leaving the call center, you two.
By the way, why does that make them happy? It's the one thing I try to figure out from your act. Why is everyone happy with that? Like, yes.
You know, like he recognized that. It's my way of saying I know what you are without saying what you are.
Right. And you're able to do that. And unlike, I can't think of another comic, but you can take that all over the world, which is amazing. I mean, you've taken stand-up comedy to places that have never had stand-up comedy before, right?
It's true. Well, I mean, I'm sure they've had tastes of it before, but I don't think they've ever had, like, the show kind of thing come to them.
Right. So where's some of the places that you've gone with stand-up comedy that it was almost, for them, like a new experience?
Well, I was in, recently I was in Oman, in the Middle East. That's where the tour started. And that was pretty wild because, you know, you look out into the audience and there's just a sea of dish dashes and hijabs. and you're like, I can't tell if she's laughing, but her head's doing this.
I mean, for most people, it's nerve-wracking enough just to go out and do stand-up. But when you move into a totally different culture and go into that, you don't really know before you try it what works and what doesn't work, right?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I write the act, and then I go and I work on it in comedy clubs for a few months to give it a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's the tentative show that I'm taking there.
Yeah.
But when you get to these places, you realize some of the things I'm saying in America are pretty racy, and you don't even think about it over here. You know, they're almost throwaway dirty things. You know what I mean? It's just like, can you swear on this?
Yes.
It's serious, right? Yeah. You'd be like, and then I came on her back, and then, like, and you don't even think about it, right?
Right.
And then as you're doing it, and you see, like, a guy who looks like a sheikh or something sitting in front of you, like, and then I finished. You're like...
So you will edit as this is going along?
I've been invited to go to Trinidad. I don't know if any of you guys are West Indian. I look right at the black people. What's your background? Haitian. Oh, okay, well, that's nothing like Trinidad at all. They speak Creole, you know? Vagabond. But, like, in Trinidad, I've been invited to go, and then they have, like, a law where you can't swear in public. But if you go to Queens and you meet Trinidadian people, they curse more than anyone I know. Tell him I got to call you fucking man, and then you go to Trinidad, you can say it in public, but you can't say it on stage in public. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's these weird laws and these little loopholes that you got to follow.
Well, some of them are laws, and some of them, I guess, are just cultural reference points as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like they're going to get all the references that you're doing anyway, right? I mean, you must be thinking that when you're writing your act, you got to go, is this for everyone? Is everyone going to be able to get
I try to write as broad as possible, yet at the same time as specific as possible. It's kind of a weird line I'm walking, I got to ride the broad specifics.
That is really, you see, here's the thing. No one else has to think that way. There's not, because you go out and make this. And I'll tell you something else. I mean, of course, Russell works 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 people. And what's really interesting when you watch the difference between you and other people is other people will get into a big room and work larger. And I never see you do that. You still kind of hold in and stay conversational.
Because I was a road comic for so long. I mean, I've been doing it 23 years, so I never made it until, quote unquote, made it until at least 16 years in. So I'd been on the road, on the hard grind all that time, and, in biker bars and in one-nighters on a Tuesday where it's like, all right, there's no cover charge. Like, all right, we got a comedian. Can you shut the TVs off? Here's the comedian. What's your name? Comedian. And then you're up there and they have no clue who you are, what you do, and you have to earn it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if you've been trained that long to work in like, I gotta make you all come together with me. That's why when I'm on the stage in like an arena, say it's 17,000 people, I'll have those cameras like that, but pointed at them.
Right.
So if I talk to this guy, he automatically goes up on the screen, and the rest of the people in the back of the room can see who I'm talking to. So now everybody's in on the joke again. And
you keep it tight, though. You keep it conversational. You don't go loud. You don't go overly broad with your expressions.
Yeah, I don't see the point of that. Then not really. That's not what they're coming to see. They're coming to see what you do. It just so happens that more people need to see you, so you have to do what you do in front of more people. And we're at the big venue not because of ego. We're at the big venue because that's what the demand has asked for.
Well, when did you even find out that demand was out there? Because, like you said, you were moving along, professional comedian, making your living. You know, that's not even a lot of people who do that. But suddenly now, the big venues popped up. When did that all start to take place?
I think it started, well, I'll give an example. Like in February of 2004, I played DePaul University in Chicago, and 13 people came to the show. And then that same year in November, I went back to Chicago and did 5 nights at some theater. And it was completely sold out, and people were like, can you add more dates? And I'm like, what happened in this in this 10-month period that all of a sudden, so I know that's when, that's how I measure when everything started to change. And then it was like, and then 2005, I did the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and that was sold out like that, and it was just people lined up around the block, and I was like, something's going on.
Yeah, right. But, what were your, these guys who had known you from the road for 16 years, the other comics, and suddenly you're playing these giant fucking places?
It was these guys in Canada, and a lot of them were haters, so it really were. It'd be like, you? You fucking made it?
Right.
I'm funnier than you. And I'm like, well, apparently not.
That is the funny thing about comedy, because you'll go into a comedy club and you'll see a comic killing, and then look in the back wall and 3 guys are just glaring. There's always the other comics who are just like, what's this shit? That should be mine.
Yeah.
But that had to be massively strange to everybody in your life when suddenly this thing took off.
Well, it was no more. It was strangest to me, really.
Yeah.
Because I'm the same guy who, I had to get other people to negotiate my gigs for me, because, you're talking about like a big payday for me before any of this would be like $500 gig. I'm like, $500?
Right.
Shit, I'm in, And now you got people like you got managers and agents calling. They're like, these people want to give you $50,000 to show up at a wedding. I'm like, well, I don't go to one. Well, sure, I'll go for $50,000. All right, sure.
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden the money just gets higher and higher to the point where I'm like, I can't even fathom these amounts. I don't have the balls at this point in time in my life to ask for the money I've been getting.
Yeah.
Like, I can't justify it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not giving you that much of entertainment.
And yet, I mean, like anything else, it's just demand. If the demand is there, you sit down.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you can't stay up here for that long. Eventually, you're going to have to come down.
Right.
So, on your way up, thank God I never shit on anybody, and I never, treated people badly, because I know that when I'm on my decline, at least I'll get high fives on the way down. You know what I mean? Hey, man, good to see you again.
5 assholes in Canada. What did we tell you?
Yeah.
We knew that wasn't going to work.
And I'm like, I know. Now I just got to sit in my house,
Right. So the other interesting thing, though, that this happened to you at this age, where you know who you are, because I think if it happens when you're young, it can really screw you up. I
see. We live in that time now, where people get in the game and they see the type of success that guys like Louis or Chris or Chappelle or Dane or even myself, they're playing these bigger venues and doing all these cool things. And you got guys that come in and they're like, I'm going to do that. That wasn't even a goal when I started. Mm-hmm. For me, it wasn't like, I'm going to do that. I'm like, that was unheard of. The only people that did that was Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy.
Right.
And Richard Pryor. I'm like, well, we're not them. So I'll be quite happy just to sell out an improv on a Saturday, not even the whole weekend, you know what I mean? and then, things like that happen. But now these kids use us as the benchmark for what they think they want to be. And that I always ask the young guys, well, what do you want? What do you want from this game? They go, I want to be rich, and I want to do this. And I'm like, well, then you should probably not be a comic, because it's not. This is not the guaranteed game for you.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you see guys rush through it, and they're headlining in less than 2 years, and you're like, dude, I never headlined until 7 years in the game. I didn't headline. My first headlining gig was '96. I was 7 years deep already, and then I was nervous. I'm like, whew. I'm headlining. But, you know, to some people now, 7 years, you're a vet. You know what I mean?
Right. But at the time that you came up and you found this thing, even though it took you a long time, you weren't discouraged because you were doing what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that's it. I just looked at it as this is what I love to do. This is what I'm going to do regardless. There was no end game for me. I had nothing else. I used to box. I wasn't that good at it. I did it for a long time, but that's because I had to. Because I was a small guy. I used to get beat up and I needed to learn how to fight. So I boxed for 9 years, and I was DJing at the same time. And I love DJing. I still box and I still DJ to this day. DJing is a lot less painful.
Yeah. The weird thing is, look how that business is taken off.
Yeah, well, now
same time as you.
Well, that's the thing. Especially as a DJ nerd, somebody started in '85 with the DJing. Like when I see guys now and everyone's got a pair of headphones on, I'm a DJ. I'm like, you're not a DJ. You're wearing headphones.
Yeah.
You got bad hearing, if anything. Like to me, a DJ needs to put in work. He needs to work those turntables and no CDJs and no, you can't sit there with virtual DJ. You're not DJing. You're pushing buttons. If you're not controlling a fader and the vinyl, I mean, you can still use a program to do that, but at least understand. My whole thing is you need to understand the base of everything. If you're going to really be into something, you need to know the history of it all in order to make it work properly ahead of you.
You said that about growing up the way that you did. You grew up pretty tough, kind of tough neighborhoods. And how has that kind of worked to your benefit? I mean, some people think that, the bullying and shit like that is bad, but I think it also sets up survival instincts.
Well, yeah. I mean, the bullying for me, like, it's sort of weird for me nowadays when I saw these bullying campaigns. Right. They're almost acting like bullying is this new disease that just started. Right. I'm like, I'm 42 years old. This shit's been around. It's not the internet. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's been there. It's always been there, and when I was a kid, if you got bullied, you couldn't sit there and go, oh, he picked on me. It wasn't like that. I grew up in a black neighborhood. It wasn't like nobody gave a shit. And it wasn't the black guys picking on me. It was like the poor white kids picking on me. And at that time, there was a lot of physical, but there was a lot of mental bullying. And for me, the mental bullying was always trying to keep me down. And that weighs on your head a lot. So it could weigh on you one way or the other. And for me, it always made me go, all right, if you say I can't do something, I'm actually not just going to do it. I'm going to do it better than you expected me to do it. And that's still my mentality to this day. Like, when I meet with network executives or movie people or whatever, and they're always like, we think we want to go this way. And I'm like, or they tell me that this isn't going to work or that's not going to work. Or I could tell when I go into, especially in LA, you go to these meetings and then you meet the executives and you could see in their eyes they don't understand what you do. Right. And then they're like, oh, well, we'll give you a call. And I'm like, they're not going to call. So all it makes me do when I leave that room is go, all I got to do is get better at what I'm doing already and bigger at what I'm doing already till it gets to the point where they can't ignore it anymore.
Isn't that interesting, too, that you're at this point where you've built this audience and thousands of people show up wherever you go, whether you're here or around the world, and yet still some guy in L.A. knows better than you? I mean, it's fucking it's ridiculous, really unbelievable.
It always makes me go, I had a deal with a network. I won't say which one. But last year this time is when the deal was up, basically. And they wanted me to come in for a meeting. They had 3 new heads at the executive. And this one lady walked in, she was like, and had no clue who I was. Like, so what do you do? Who are you? Like, basically, who are you? And I'm like, I've got a deal with your network. This is my 3rd deal with your network. I mean, I'm going to go back on tour next year and perform for hundreds of thousands of people. And this fucking animal is looking at me like, who are you? And she treated me like a piece of shit in the meeting. And I'm like, all right, well. So, and I'm not the guy who, I just can't kiss ass for no reason. You know what I mean? Like, if I genuinely like you, I'll be nice to you. But you basically, with me, you get what you give. So she was being shitty, so I thought I'd be shitty too. She was like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Who are you?
But
How did you get this job?" You know?
it is true because one of you has an audience. One of you built a
Nobody's paying to see her.
Right. You've built a worldwide audience, and you would think that their response would be, "Thank you for choosing us."
Yeah, or at least be like, "Look, we're not going to go any further with this project, but maybe next time." But she was just like dismissive and shitty, and I was like, ugh.
So the TV and stuff, you still struggle with where that part of it's going to go, even though you couldn't get. Well, maybe you could get bigger as a stand-up. You keep finding new countries to go to. I mean, I don't know.
The more dissension there is in the world, the better it gets for me.
Is that right? Do you go, "Oh, here's a hot zone.
Yeah.
Let me go in"?
I'm like this. I can't wait for Iraq to cool down.
What makes you, I mean, of course, you grew up Anglo-Indian, but that shouldn't give you a lot in common with a lot of those Arab nations that you feel comfortable going into.
If you go to the Middle East, I've said it in my act before, but it's true that if you go to the Middle East, Indians are everywhere there. We are the Mexicans of the Middle East. Like, we do everything out there. Like, I'm serious. Gardeners, hello, hello. That's like the chef, hello, hello. Everybody is just hello, hello. And it's Indians and Filipinos in the Middle East, like for the majority. Like, all the nannies and nurses are Filipinos, and all the rest of the workers are Indian. So and if you meet like a rich Arab kid who grew up in the Middle East, you're like, and I always ask him, "How many Indians did you own?" "Well, we never. Okay, 3. Like whatever. And how many Filipinos? 2. We had 2. And which ones did you let in the house? Filipinos. Filipinos were in the house. Indians were out of the house.
But everybody shows up at these shows, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's. I think maybe that, especially to them, I represent the common man, because I hope I don't have an elitist attitude. You know what I mean? And so when I go to these places, they're kind of like, "Well, that guy looks like us."
Right.
He's one of ours, and these people that drove their Arab family to the venue, and then they'll be parked out back and with their limos or whatever area, and I usually pull in that way, and I'm like, "Hey, come on in, watch the show," because I see my people, and I'm like, "Well, why are you guys sitting out here like animals? Just go in, sit on the side, and when the show's over, run back to your car. Nobody knows you were here." You know what I mean?
So you're able to use that. How do you know that you've got an audience in some of these new places now?
I don't.
You never know before you book it?
I don't know. We won't book it unless it's a request, you know what I mean? But we can tell by how many emails we get from certain countries and the type of questions they ask.
Because YouTube is what certainly helped you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And then your own website, I guess?
I think YouTube helped me more than my own website.
Is that right?
I would love to say my own website did that, but my own website didn't go up until maybe 2.5, 3 years after things had started moving. Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing that's happened, and I mean, if you look back in this country with Jewish comedians in the 50s and like Pat Cooper when he was working, where they were acting like they were doing Italian or Jewish material, but it ends up being family material.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When I do family material, or I make it, this is what an Indian family does, it's more, this is my perspective on what my family does. However, I do know that every other family did the exact same thing.
Right. Everybody's got the uncle.
It's the same uncle, it's the same dad, it's the same mom, just a different accent.
And yet, that must mean quite a bit to that audience to see somebody reflecting back to them.
Well, yeah, because I think a lot of my audience feels like they're an invisible minority. They're just kind of blended in with the masses. And then, like you may see black comics, right? But they're black American comics who don't really understand your home life. Do you know what I mean? Because your parents were immigrants, so they're like, they'll talk in general terms, and you'll be like, yeah, I get it, because, I grew up around that. But then if somebody came up and said something very specific to you, you'd be like, oh, hold on, this guy really gets it. You know what I mean? And that's what it's all about. It's like, here's the general broad strokes, and then just so you know, I know what happens in your house. You know what I mean?
And I think that's also kind of goes to show that it turned out to be lucky for your career of you being a street kid and being out a lot, because you kind of know how street people talk, and that more or less is your audience. You know, if you were suddenly educated in private schools,
that wouldn't have worked for me.
It would have fucked up your whole life.
Yeah, it would have, because I would have been. You need to know both sides of the coin, you know. And growing up where I grew up, just outside of Toronto, in a town called Brampton. Now Brampton is all Indian. Like, it's just. Like, they call it Bangladesh, which is, you know, it's kind of... but when I was growing up, it was not like that at all. It was, there was like working class white families and then working class black families. Yeah, and I was, you know, I was there too. We were the Indian community, my family. You know what I mean?
You know, I love the fact that you're out in some of these white Canadians, because they always come here and tell us how they're the nicest people in the world. Canadians love to tell you how kind they are.
If somebody has to tell you how kind they are.
Well, I was thinking, you know, the same people that invented hockey. How nice could they possibly be?
By the way, we invented basketball, just so you know. Did you know that?
Yeah, but you haven't gone far with it. That's the problem.
Hey, I didn't say we were good at it. I just said we invented it. It's kind of like we went, oh, Christ, what are we going to do with this? Here, America. And they went, thanks.
Yeah. First pass to a black guy, you never got it back.
That's
you
right.
just kept right on going.
They thought we were like, some black guy stole our ball.
Back to hockey. You've played India.
I played India.
You weren't born there, but
No.
your parents are from there.
Yep.
What was that kind of homecoming like for you? I mean, that had to be a strange thing.
It was a cool experience, because I was expecting them to not get it. Like, I knew they were fans or whatever, but you know, I always think in my head before I go to these countries, if I've never been there or have, you know, not performed there, that they're watching something on YouTube, but they've watched it enough times to break it down and understand it. You know what I mean? So that when I go there and I'm performing for the first time, I always think there's going to be a disconnect, because they don't have the time to study it and really take it in. But India, strangely enough, was the one country in the world where they were sharper than any country I'd ever been to. And everything I said, there was no delay. It was like, bam, bam. And they caught everything. And they caught every reference. I didn't change very much at all. And it really tripped me out, like how sharp and perceptive they were.
How about critically? You get over with the critics there as much as you do the regular people? Or
First of all, I don't really give a shit about the critics, but I think if the critics were there, they were there because they understood what I was doing in the first place. They obviously can't send some Indian guy who doesn't speak English to the show. He's like, I didn't know what was happening everywhere. He must have been terrible. They were laughing at him. You know,
So that had to be an amazing feeling to be back there like that.
It was really cool. And then, I've always made fun of Bollywood movies, and I didn't grow up watching them. I didn't like them. And then when I would get to do my shows, I'd look in the audience, and there'd be like all the people backstage working in the venues that were from India. They'd be like, oh my God, so-and-so is here, and so-and-so. And I'm like, who the fuck are they? And they're like, they're big Bollywood stars. And I'm like, what do they come to my show for? And I'm like thinking they'd be insulted, but actually I met all these Bollywood actors and actresses, and they were cool as hell. They were like, yeah, it's a little hokey, but whatever.
Yeah.
They like it, and that's the bottom line, And I'm like, fair enough. You know what I mean? I can't get mad at you for that.
And they do big money with those films.
They do huge money. Yeah. And the actresses are pretty hot.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, it's some good action over there.
But fairly...
I mean, you're not going to score, but it's good action regardless. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty conservative,
Scoring over there is like a high five. All right.
I think...
Did you high five her? In there, buddy.
Because there was somebody, I forget when, somebody went there and gave a girl a kiss.
Oh, Richard Gere.
Oh, yeah, and they were furious.
It's funny enough, he kissed my friend's wife. Shilpa Shetty kissed her on the lips.
And that
spawned some sort of big controversy. And then, and then it's so funny because I didn't realize I was friends with her husband. And I was in India in April doing a TV thing. And her husband invited me over. And then I didn't know that they were married. And then I get to the house and I'm like, hey, shit. Shit, she's married.
So, I mean, those are the type of things that could happen to you at any time. You've got to be...
Well, yeah, I mean, you obviously... The minute I leave North America, I understand I'm not home anymore.
Right.
And that you got to modify your behavior. You can't just act like, if you're in somebody else's house, you can't just go shit in the kitchen. You know what I mean? You got to, if that's what you do at home, I don't. I don't anymore, but I mean, but you have to be a little more aware of your surroundings,
And you're meeting VIPs, the government and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's always weird to me because I'm not a political guy at all. And I don't really respect political figures because to me they're just regular people who are somewhat power hungry. And they're very look at me kind of people.
Right.
But they have other people saying, look at him. You know what I mean? But really, at the end of the day, they got into it because they just want power.
And do you find that that's the same all over the world?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter who they are. I mean, if you're born into it, like I met the King of Jordan, and he was a fan. Isn't that as the strangest sentence to ever say, right? But the King of Jordan was a fan of mine, and my first instinct was, holy shit, the King of Jordan is an illegal downloader. That's what I was thinking. Instead of going, wow, the King of Jordan, I was like, he's a downloader. That's it. So I met him, and he was cool. He was like the coolest dude I'd ever met in my life. And there was no airs of him being a king. It wasn't like us, and blah, blah, blah. He was the most chill, humble, normal guy I'd ever met. And then I said to my brother when we were on the way home, I go, if I was king, I would have just had everybody who was mean to me tortured. I'd been like, people that fucked me over, I'd fuck them back over. You know what I mean? Or chicks that I wanted to date, I think we should go out now. But then that's why we're not royalty.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we would abuse the shit out of it. You can't just all of a sudden be handed that power. It has to be with you the whole time.
And you're at the palace, literally.
I'm at the palace.
At the palace.
In the personal residence of the palace. Not just, he didn't invite me over and then send us to one of the wings. He put us in the personal side.
And do you ever get comfortable with that, or you're like, I'm at the palace the whole time?
I was very uncomfortable at first, but he didn't. When the king invited us, it was the king, myself, my brother, my sister-in-law, Gabriel Iglesias, Angelo Sarukis, the queen, the king's brother, the prince, and there was no guy standing around with guns. There was no Secret Service. There was nobody else. It was just us. It was like a room like this, and there's no security. And I'm like, oh wow. So this is like the king's way of saying, hey man, relax. It's gonna be all right. And he cooked for us, and he was cool. And then he had a gun range in the basement of the palace. And he goes, you like firing guns? And I'm like, and he has no accent. He was like, do you like firing guns? It wasn't like, you like firing guns. He didn't sound like this madman that they would have done in an HBO special. Here's the king. Oh, fire guns. He was like, hey, so they like firing guns? He went to school in Boston.
Yeah.
And I go, I don't know. He goes, yeah, come on, let me show you. I got a gun collection. And I go, okay. And he had this ridiculous arsenal of weapons and an amazing gun range. And he goes, yeah, fire whatever you want. And it was all kinds of guns. And it was, and he's like a gun expert. It's not like, I don't know how they work, but, yeah, it was like, this one is made by so-and-so and you can do this with it. And he was like, making sure we didn't screw up or fire the roof or anything, He was a pretty hands-on, intelligent, smart guy.
I just can't tell you guys how weird this is for a comedian to have this experience. Normally you meet a couple strippers, and
if I could be honest with you, I'd probably rather that. But
he would rather have that range downstairs.
Yeah. I got a gun range for him. Let me fire something, sweetheart. No, it's not a double barrel.
Does this all still? Is it all still baffling, or is it business as usual? As you're traveling the world and getting to do this stuff, do you start to lose that sense of...
No, I think if you do start to take things for granted, that's probably when you should back out of it. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the good thing about having to put in all that work all those years, is that you know that world much better than you know this world. Mm-hmm. I know poor better than I know rich. You know what I mean? I haven't had money for that long. You can tell by my shopping habits. Like, I buy dumb shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you an example. This is, I know it's going to sound like I'm bragging, but this is how ridiculous. This is how you know I have new money. I used to have a Bentley convertible, right? And I bought it because when I didn't have money, I always said, man, I love that Bentley convertible. One day. And then I bought it. I bought it used, just for the record. I don't buy brand new expensive cars. I buy them used because I let some other douche spend the full pop and then return it and let the depreciation happen. Then I start saving money from there, right? So I buy this Bentley convertible. A beautiful car. I loved it. And then my ex-girlfriends and my ex-wife, they were all watching those Real Housewives shows. And I kept seeing all these useless women that didn't work and lived this extraordinary lifestyle, driving the same car. And I was like, those bitches didn't work for that car. And they're driving the same car as me. I felt emasculated. So I was looking to replace that car. And then I looked at the Ferrari, and I looked at the Aston Martin, and I looked at the Maserati, and I'm like, these are step downs from the Bentley. And then I looked, there's only one direction to go from there, Rolls-Royce. So I drove to the Rolls-Royce dealership, and I found a used Rolls-Royce convertible, and I traded in the Bentley, and now I'm quite happy with that. But at the same time, I still wheeled and dealed this thing where a brand new Rolls-Royce convertible is like $500,000. They had a used one. Thrifty. They had a used one for $315,000 or something like that. I talked them down to $285,000. Right? And then I said, "Oh, I want to trade in this Bentley." So they gave me $110,000 for the Bentley. So I paid $175,000 for a $500,000 car. That was me going, fuck yeah. That was the only way I could justify that. I would never walk in and be like, I'll take it. You know what I mean? I needed a deal. I needed a reason to justify it. I thought of my dad. What would my dad say? You're wasting all your bloody money on these stupid cars. But then I was like, in my head, I was like, but look, Dad, 175 versus 500, high five. You know what I mean?
But I think that's also an interesting thing because rock stars spend their money without thinking about it.
I watch people go and spend money like that. And I'm like, it doesn't matter how much I make or how much I have. I always have that hesitation where it's like, I don't know. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Like, that seems like a lot of money. But then, like, I'll go do something dumb like that. But then AT&T will be like, your phone bill was $800. I go, $800? Are you out of your fucking mind? And they'll be like, you're driving around in a Rolls Royce. Doesn't matter. They didn't rip me off for a phone bill. You know?
So as you're taking this around the world now, does it still feel like it's heading up to you? Because
no, it's starting to feel like it's plateauing.
Does it really?
Yeah, and I sense a dissension, you know.
Dude, I got to tell you, I mean, we just built an arena in Brooklyn, and you're selling it out there, and we haven't even put the floor down yet. I mean,
well, I'm hoping that one sells out, really. You know what I mean? Me talking about a Rolls Royce doesn't make anybody want to buy tickets anymore. People are like, well, give me a free one, stupid. Yeah,
but it is still happening.
It's at doing the Barclays Center November 10th.
But you're somewhat of a worrier. You worry.
I worry that it won't be full. I worry that people are already fed up of me. I worry that people think I'm going to go do the same old routine, and it's not. I always write a new act. Whenever I go on tour, it's a new act. Unless you catch the same tour a year later. I mean, and even then it'll be a similar act to what I was doing a year ago, but by a year later, the act has morphed into something else already.
Right. And you're also very conversational with your audience.
Yeah.
Which gives you material that some people have never seen, no matter, even if they go 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, you can't predict what somebody's going to say.
Right.
And people always ask me if I've planted people. Now, I don't know how you could plant somebody in the audience. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why somebody meet me before the show and they're like, hey, my brother-in-law's in the front row. And I'm like, I'm not talking to him no more.
Right.
Because I need it to be fresh. I need it to happen right then. It has.
Yeah.
And you can tell if it's been faked, you know what I mean?
Sure. Particularly, you could, acting isn't even all that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're watching a movie, you'll be able to say that person's acting. In an arena, if something's planned, you can find out immediately. Everyone, because then it becomes like a circus act where that guy comes running in.
Yeah, and a pie in the face or something. You know, it's got to be organic. It's got to be real.
When you first went over to England, because that was the first new market for you, right?
That was 95.
And you kept slugging it out at those places and having to get bigger and bigger. But after 2004 is when it all started to really pop very, very fast for you.
I used to be on the circuit in England from 95 till about, I would say 2002. I would go there literally I would spend so much time over there. I would go do 2 weeks, come back for a week, go 2 weeks, come back for a week, go for a month, come back for a week. I was the opening act in England for DL Hughley for like 5 weeks at one time. And it wasn't like DL and I knew each other. It was just, I was out there, and then the promoter was like, we need an opening act. And somebody in North America, I was like, oh, they'll do that, you know. And then Michael Winslow, I was his opening act, you know. I just happened to be out there all the time. And then I ended up hosting a talk show on BBC Two for 2 seasons, which I was not good at. I mean, the first season I was horrible. Second season I was a lot better, but the show itself was pretty bad. You know what I mean? I didn't have any say who the guests were, and it was the Asian programming unit, so they just put anybody that was Indian on the show. It was like, literally, it was like, this person was an extra in Return of the Jedi, and I'm like, so who were you? Well, I was standing by the rock. If you look, you know. I'm like, that's great. You're doing great, buddy. You know. And like, they would give me like the worst guests, and I'm like, look, just because they're Indian doesn't mean they have to be on the show. Not everything I do is Indian. You know what I mean? Isn't it enough that I'm already Indian?
You know, some bookers like, Russell's gonna love this guy. Met him at the supermarket.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Oh my God, you'd love my chiropractor. Why? I don't have a bad back. I'm not going to love your chiropractor.
So a lot of this just has to be a drive in you, dude. That, you know, I mean, that it's one thing to be doing it now, but when you were doing it during those other years, what kept that going? It was
the thrill of being paid to do something I probably would have been doing in a shoe store, making fun of people or talking to people. You know what I mean? It's for me. It was like they're going to pay me to talk. Even if it was shit money, it didn't matter to me. I would have been talking for free wherever I was. So it's worked out for me.
So there never was a time when you're like, oh man, I should have done something else. Should have went a different direction.
There was I remember one time in like 98, I was still living with my parents. And in comedy, well, in Canada at least, you would get paid from the gigs on I think it was a Thursday you would get paid. So you would do gigs on the weekend and you wouldn't get paid till Thursday. And comedians are notoriously bad with money and always broke. And that was me, for sure. And then I remember saying to my dad, Dad, can I borrow $100? I got a check coming Thursday, but I don't have any money right now. And I remember my dad going, I don't think this comedy thing's working out for you. And I go, what? Why don't you get a job? I go, Dad, I've been doing this for 9 years already. Well, clearly it's not working out because you don't have any money. And I'm like, no, but I have money. I just don't have the money. I can see the money, but it's not Thursday yet. And he was like, why don't you just do something in the day? And I'm like, I can't. What am I going to do? Work at Burger King? Why? Why can't you work at Burger King? Are you too good for Burger King? And I'm like, what? Dad, I've been on TV. I've been on TV. I can't go. What if I'm working at Burger King? Some guy walks in, oh my God, Russell Peters. Yo, I love your comedy. Can I get the Whopper combo?
And that would have been fine with him. He's like,
yeah. My dad. I think my dad was the reason. Like, I never ever let my ego get the better of me because it would always ring in my head. Like, you are never bigger than, you are never who you think you are. You know what I mean? Did
your dad have a chance to see all this happen?
No.
Oh man.
He passed away March 15th, 2004. And everything, but I kind of feel like he had a hand in it, you know what I mean? Because it was literally a week later where things started to change. Like, my career just started going in a completely different direction. Like I said, in February of 04, I had played DePaul University for 13 people. That was 1 month to the day, or almost 1 month to the day before he died. And then literally a week later, just things started really moving in a different fashion. So I always feel like he may not have physically saw it, but he kind of had a hand in it from the other side, you know?
Right. And you stay connected. Because the great thing is, like, you're working with your brother. He manages stuff for you. And
yeah, my brother's my manager.
Could you imagine how much that your dad would have enjoyed that whole thing of, you know?
Oh, yeah, he would dig that, you know? And then I take care of my mom, and, you know, I've offered to buy her, like, a bigger and better house. She's like, no, I don't need a bigger house. I like this one. And I know my neighbors. And, like, she lives in, like, a little semi-detached house. And I'm like, Ma, it's kind of embarrassing, you know, that my mom's living, like, it's kind of a ghetto street still, you know what I mean? But, so, like, I do what I can, like, I fixed it all up, you know, the whole time my dad was alive, they always wanted to renovate the basement because they wanted to have a finished basement, but we never had the money to finish the basement. So then I finished her basement, like, about a couple of years ago. And, you know, my dad was already dead. My mom doesn't drink, but my dad always wanted a bar, so my mom made me put a bar in the basement. There's this huge bar, a beautiful bar in the basement. Nobody drinks in that house. And it's stocked. It's not like there's a bar with it's all full of booze. And she'll call me when are you coming home? Grab me some whiskey. And I'm like, who's it for? The bar. I'm like, all right, you know. But she's got the finished basement, and I didn't know what else to do. She wanted a sunroom, so I built a sunroom on the side of the house. So the house is really nice now, but it's still attached to this douchebag next door. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yet, you know, if you moved to some big house away from her friends or
yeah, she would be miserable.
Yeah, it would be terrible for her.
Yeah, I have a really nice house just outside of Toronto, and I was like, why don't you just live here? You know, it's really nice. It's got heated floors. You know, the driveway's heated. You don't even have to shovel. It's got a pool. You can do whatever you want. No, it's too far from everybody. You know, my mom lives the simple life. Like right. she gets off on that. When she comes to visit me in LA, the first thing she wants to do is go to Kmart. Because there's no Kmart in Canada. I'm not joking. She's like, I want to go to Kmart. I need some stretchy jeans. Like that's her thing. Like with these ones. No, I need elastic waist. You know, she thinks the Jacqueline Smith collection is cool. It's like, she has nice big women's clothing, you know. But Mom, you're 4'10". She's a little round, but you know, that's what moms are supposed to look like.
What did she make of your success? How does this whole thing play for her?
I still don't think she really gets it.
Yeah.
Like, she gets it and she doesn't get it, you know? It's one of those things where like if I called her right now and said, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing press. Are they paying you? That's what she would ask me. Are they paying me? No, they don't pay you for press, Ma. You do this to help your career. They should pay you. You know, it's stuff like that, or, you know.
So there wasn't any show business background for you. Did you watch comedy on TV?
I used to buy comedy records growing up.
Who were you into?
I had Carlin, Steve Martin, Cheech and Chong, and then I would listen to. It's so funny because I bought the Big Bamboo album, the Cheech and Chong album, and it came with that giant rolling paper. Yeah. I was like 9 years old. First of all, I had no clue that Cheech and Chong were talking about weed or smoking drugs or anything. I just thought the voices were really funny. Sister Mary Elephant and all that stuff would just make me laugh. And then I remember getting the giant rolling paper and I'm like, oh, what is this? This is dumb. And I threw it out, and the neighbor, you know, was like a 16-year-old stoner guy. I was like, what you throw that out for?
I think it is a totally different experience to listen to comedy too.
It is, because I think our generation is just better at visualizing things because we had to. We didn't have anything in front of us. You guys, like even now, I tried to play like some of the Cheech and Chong stuff for one of my friends, but I had to go to YouTube to play it. Mm-hmm. And I just, it's a buddy of mine. He's like, he's a young guy. He's 26. So, you know, he grew up with the internet and all that stuff. And he's, you know, looking at it. Well, he's looking at the screen, but there's no visual. It's just the audio. And he's staring at the screen still. I'm like, what are you staring at the screen for? It's just audio. You can turn your head. You can look around, just picture what's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just doesn't exist.
But he was like, yeah, this is stupid. I can't see anything. I'm like, you're not supposed to. This is what comedy originally was.
Right.
It was just sonic.
Yeah, and it added to the mystery of it. Like, where does this happen at?
Yeah.
How does this happen? Who are these people? Everything had such a kind of a odd hip thing about it. You know, you work so much with race and culture, and that's always a fine line, because there's a lot of people, particularly when they're not in the room, that can hear those jokes and get weirded out by it.
Well, I generally only like to talk about people when they're in the room, because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm slighting them. You know what I mean?
Right.
If I talk about you, it's more to celebrate what I know about you. It's not to put it down, because if you can put down people, well, then you're really not doing anybody any help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that backhanded compliment stuff, which I love doing, you know.
But you're also bringing different cultures together. And that's like, I can't think of another comic that's been able to pull that off. And it does almost feel like Star Trek to me. Like, you might be the first comic of the Federation, for all we know, right? It's just like, everyone is pulled together on the deck now. But I think that you're doing like an amazing thing of finding out how these people that we've separated ourselves, and just how similar that separation is with each other. You know, I know that probably isn't what you set out to do.
No, I had no intention of that. And I also think it's a product of the time we live in. With, you know, the internet really has made the world a global village, you know? And there is kind of like a middle ground for everything, and I think the middle ground is America. Everything that America does, the whole world understands, because they watch it, they look at it, it's got such great production value, and so that's kind of like point zero, and then cultures will go on either side of that, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, I'll be playing England, and I'll get people flying in from Italy and Greece and Russia to come see me in England, but I don't know that I have enough clout to go to Italy, Greece, or Russia to perform. But the people that do get it will come out to see me. And when I make the accents, or when I do the accents or talk about different races, they get that from the perspective of the American accent is kind of like the normal one, and then everything outside of that is funny. You know what I mean?
And because you've never felt the need to work in other languages.
I can't speak any other languages, so... I mean, I know words in people's languages, and I try to say them as best I can, so that way they think I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I have no clue. I mean, I know what I'm saying. But if they reply, I get all fucked up, because I'm like, it's kind of like, well, that's all I had. You know?
Done now. But do you think other comics are going to be able to go out and kind of move into some of these cultures? Or
I mean, I see comics now that are going to some of the markets that I've. I don't want to say I created the markets, but places I've been to before them. And I see younger, newer Indian comics going to trying to follow the same path as me. But they're really kind of missing the point that I never set out to do those places. Those places called me, that's why I went.
Right.
But now everybody looks at it as, oh, that must be the circuit. And I'm like, that's not the circuit, you know. And they go there, and then, you know, I'll get reports when I go to those countries. We had so-and-so. He was really good. I'm like, he hasn't had enough experience.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just took him based on the color of his skin. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, because your whole background isn't based on that culture. It's based on the Canadian comedy scene, which is really a long, you know, place to work too. I mean, you worked all of Canada for a long time.
I did,
right?
yeah.
Which is how many miles in between gigs?
Oh, there was.
You know, I mean, I'll
give you an example. My first car was a 1992 Saturn. I got it in 1992. It was $9,000, brand new. It was no options. It didn't have. I'm not exaggerating when I say it didn't have a side mirror on the passenger side. That was an option. Like, it had one mirror on the driver's side, but the passenger side mirror was an option. And my dad bought me a mirror as a here, you bought your first car. Here's a mirror, you know? So, like, that was his gift. And so to me, I was like, I felt like I had a higher model now of a car because I had two fucking mirrors. Anyway, that car from 1992 to 1995, between doing road gigs, I put $250,000 on it.
Yeah, it's you can do that in Canada.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a huge country. It's the second largest landmass in the world.
You know, I was up there, and this is honestly true. I was asking somebody where a great restaurant to go was. I'm not making this up. He was like, go down for 3 miles, make a right, go down 2 lights, make a left, go about 95 miles, and then you're going to come to this place, make a right. And I'm like, wait, the middle part. And that's fucking Canada. They will take off like that.
Well, Canada, yeah, because the distances are so great that, you know, you get bored when people are giving you directions. You know what I mean? They're like, all right, what you want to do is you want to go straight down here. And I'm like, straight down here. And then when you get to the stop sign, hang a left. Stop sign, hang a left. And then you're going to hit 2 lights. And the minute they say 2 lights, I've already checked out. I'm like, all I know is straight down the road, stop sign left. And then I'm going to ask somebody else when I took a left. And the guys, all you see is this. And I'm like, stop sign, turn left. Stop sign, turn left. Thank you very much. And then you drive away, you turn around and go, okay, excuse me, do you know how to get to here? Yeah, what you want to do is you want to go straight down here now. You get bored. That's how long the directions are.
You hit on all these other places before really big in New York and LA though, right? I mean, it felt like about the same time that you hit overseas as where you hit New York and LA.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it was kind of like it was very nuclear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just kind of poof and then spread. And I didn't expect like to come to America and have anybody know who I was, because you know, for me growing up, I was always watching American television, and in Canada you would get all the American feeds, and we would, whatever border town you're in, we would get all the Buffalo news. Mm-hmm. Which is great news. You know, so all we knew of New York was Cheektowaga and Tonawanda, you know. but we would just get all these American TV, and we would try to watch Canadian TV, but it was pretty bad. Canadian programming was really awful. It's only just now starting to get good.
But the one thing I do like about what they do up there is they go, so much of this has to be for Canadians. They do the same thing with music. Yeah. And it gives people a chance.
It does, but it's more of a, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Patronizing, you know what I mean?
It is.
It's just like, well, yeah, here you go. You know?
So you've got shows on up there before.
Yeah, I mean, like when I did my first TV special was in 1995. It was a show called Comics, and CBC produced that, and and that's because they had the funding. They had to do a certain amount of Canadian programming. So somebody went, we should do a stand-up series. So it was like, 30-minute specials for about 10 comics. And I was 24 years old when I shot that one. And, way to go.
It was an alarm?
I don't trust brown people in buildings with alarms going off.
I'm just going to watch you. You're going to know.
No sudden movements. No sudden movements.
Although after this week's news, it's really white people that are dangerous.
That's right. Crackers gone wild.
Yeah. You know what? I do think to get into like a race thing, though, the big difference is that white people never feel overly responsible when other white people do stuff. We're just like, oh, it was
just that one guy.
Yeah, it was just that one guy. Fuck it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was watching last night on PBS, I think it was. They're doing this whole World War II thing right now, and I was watching it, and they were talking about, hey, hipsters.
They really are hipsters.
Wow, what an ironic mustache. There were these guys, and they were talking to these old guys who were in World War II or whatever, and they were talking about when they entered France and stuff like that, and all the ships in the harbor, and they was like, and then we would pray, and then the Lord was with us, and then I started thinking about this is the exact same thing that all the terrorists are doing. Mm-hmm. They do their praying, and then the Lord is with us, and whoever the ships fall where they may. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, it's the exact same thing,
right?
But it's not viewed at the same way. You know what I mean? But they're doing the exact same things.
It would be really great if there was like one army that had to say like, be careful, guys, because the Lord's against us. We gotta really keep this between us. But everybody has faith. Faith is,
I don't.
None at all.
I have none. I'm anti-religion for me. For me, if it works for you, I say it works for you. It's just, I'm more of a spiritual guy, You kind of innately know what not to do to people. Mm-hmm. I know I'm not going to kill anybody. I know I'm not going to fuck anybody over. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can't say I'll follow the rest of the stuff. Sure, I I fall to pleasures of the flesh, but that's your lady's fault with your filthy vaginas. Please don't have filthy vaginas.
Well, I could tell you this, man. As you're going around doing this, no matter what happens in the future, there can only be the one first guy, and you're the first guy to take that stuff out there.
It feels good. And at the end of the day, that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't care who comes along and who's better at it and who's funnier at it. At the end of the day, I was the first guy.
There he is, folks.
That's how I look at it.
The first guy. Russell Peters, I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, buddy.